We recently visited Japan for the very first time. We went along the most popular tourist route, which is the Golden Route from Tokyo to Kyoto to Osaka. And it's safe to say that Japan did not disappoint, but there were a lot of things that we learnt along the way that we wish we had known before traveling to Japan. Now, with the upcoming cherry blossom season, I'm sure there are many of you watching this who are traveling to Japan, and so we thought we'd put together a video going through the things that we wish we had known before traveling to Japan so that you don't make the same mistakes we made. Number one, what are the best times to visit Japan? Now, there are two seasons in particular. One we've already mentioned, which is the cherry blossom season that happens between the months of March and May. Now, the reason why everyone's coming during this period is to witness the blooming cherry blossoms, of course, and the beautiful pink flowers. And it's actually a very comfortable temperature. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, so it's ideal time to visit. But the downside of that is that it can get extremely busy because everyone wants to come during this season. Now, the second season is the autumn or fall. That's when we actually came to Japan in the month of November. And these months are from October to November, and I would say the start of December. And this is when you get to witness the very beautiful autumn colors, the red and golden leaves of the maple trees. And that was absolutely stunning for us to witness. Again, comfortable temperatures, and the downside of that is that it can get extremely busy, especially on the Golden Route. Now that you know the best times to visit Japan, what are the worst times? So the months that I would avoid are late June to early September. It is extremely hot, it's extremely humid, and it rains a lot. They even have the typhoon season between the months of August and early September. So you definitely don't want to be planning your dream destination to Japan during this period. Number three, do you need cash in Japan, or can you get away with using a debit or credit card? And the answer to that question is that you very much still need cash in Japan.
So actually what we did when we arrived at the airport, we went to the ATM and we withdrew in between 200 and 300 US dollars. And we always use our travel card, so there's no fees associated. And we also don't like to keep cash on us. So whenever you need, you just can go to 7-Eleven and you can withdraw money there. And there was also no fees.
Yeah, so no fees if you withdraw from 7-Eleven. It's very convenient. And the reason why you need cash is that, to our surprise actually, we found out actually eating at restaurants and small mom and pop shops and even getting food at like kind of street food areas, you needed cash. And so when people say that Japan is like cashless, it very much isn't. So the best way to approach this is to have a combination of a travel card, some cash, and a Suica card, which brings us swiftly on to point number 4, which is how do you take local transport? So you want to be getting yourself a Suica card. So when we arrived at Narita Airport, at the train station, we got ourselves a welcome Suica. Now, there's a few different variations of Suica card. The welcome Suica lasts 30 days, and that's the one we got, and we topped up with, I think, 10,000 yen,
yeah.
Which is the maximum amount. And we were traveling for about 3 weeks, and you can actually use the Suica card also at convenience stores and also vending machines.
Yeah.
So that's the amount that we kind of topped up our card. Now, there is another Suica that actually lasts, I think, up to 10 years. And you can get them at the train stations. It's like a more of a green looking Suica card. And the good thing about that is that you can actually redeem your balance. But the best way to get a Suica card is if you have an iPhone. So you can download a Suica card app on your phone. So you can basically have a digital Suica card, which is nice because you don't have to you won't have the risk of losing your Suica card. But the problem with this is that if you're an Android user and you don't have an Android phone from Japan, which I think is probably 99% of the people watching this, is that the digital Suica card does not work on Android. So for those people who don't have a Japanese Android phone, you want to be getting the regular Suica or the welcome Suica.
Point number 5 is our tips for taking the Shinkansen. So definitely make sure to come early, because it literally took us around like 2 hours to navigate the Tokyo station and to find the right gates for our Tokaido Shinkansen. And overall, the experience was quite overwhelming
and stressful, especially for first timers navigating their way to find their right Shinkansen gate. And one thing to know about the underground system in Tokyo is that it's like a city within itself. It is absolutely massive, and it's chaotic, and it can be very kind of complex for first timers trying to navigate that. And so we came 2 hours early, and I think we needed like 3 hours,
which is crazy to think.
And that would make the experience so much more smoother, and you wouldn't be as stressed out as we were. And actually, it will give you plenty of time also to purchase a
Ekiben, which literally translates to Eki train station, and ben like a short form for bento box that you take on the board with you. And there's so many different options, so I'm sure that you will find a good one for yourself. And one thing to actually stress out is that there was no dining carriage on our Shinkansen, I was so surprised.
And so it's useful to get the Ekiben. Now, this comes on to our biggest mistake I think we made in Japan, was that we didn't purchase the oversized luggage seat. Now, we used the main website to purchase our tickets, and it was safe to say that it was very difficult to actually understand where to purchase the seats. And we're very diligent, like we research a lot, and even for us, we found it difficult, and we made the mistake. And they made a notification on the train that whoever's suitcases these are, please come and get them because they're in the wrong location.
It was so embarrassing.
It was embarrassing, and this is something that you do not want to do. This is like a typical tourist mistake in Japan. And what we recommend is booking the Shinkansen with Klook. And so with Klook, they make it very obvious where the oversized luggage spots are. And also a bonus is that they'll actually give you an option to sit on the Mount Fuji side. So when you're going from Tokyo to Kyoto, there is a chance to see Mount Fuji. And on the main website, it was just hard to decipher actually what you're getting, and I think that's why we made the mistake. So we'll put a link in the description to Klook where you can book the Shinkansen, and at checkout, if you use our code JKarolinaKlook, you'll get some nice discount. Another thing we'll do is we'll put the link to all of our videos from Japan in the description, and this is really useful because if you're worried about taking the Shinkansen, we pretty much filmed the whole entire experience, and we do it in like a raw fashion, so it really is a great way to kind of walk through that experience. Number 6, should you buy a JR Pass? Now, if you've been researching your travels to Japan, you probably heard about the Japan Rail Pass, and you're wondering, when I'm taking the Shinkansens and the trains around Japan, will it be more cost effective to get a JR Pass? And the answer to that question is not anymore. Back in the past, the price of the JR Pass was a lot cheaper, and actually it's increased in price quite significantly. I think it's around 70% increase. And so for most people coming to Japan, it just doesn't make sense to get a JR Pass. And so if you're worried about that, you're like, should I get one? Should I not? I think if you're going, from Tokyo to Kyoto to Osaka, you don't need to worry about it. And if you're going from Tokyo to Kyoto, you can just book the Shinkansen with Klook. And actually from Kyoto to Osaka, it actually works out much cheaper just taking a local train rather than taking the Shinkansen. You've already had the Shinkansen experience, and so you can actually use your Suica card to take the train from Kyoto to Osaka. I think the only time you'd want to consider getting a JR Pass is if you're expecting to take many trains all around Japan. If you're traveling within a very short space of time on multiple trains, you're traveling to specific regions of Japan, then it's worth researching which pass may be ideal for you. The problem is that it's actually quite complex. It's actually not easy to understand which pass to go for. But I would say for the most part that most of the people watching this, you don't need to worry about it. Number 7, book activities and experiences well in advance. So when we arrived to Tokyo, we had nothing booked. We had no experiences, no activities booked, and that was our first mistake, especially coming during a peak season, during fall, autumn time. When we came to Tokyo, we wanted to book, I think it was Shibuya Sky. It's the observation deck where you get a very beautiful view overlooking Tokyo, and we wanted to do it for sunset, which is super ironic because that is the most prime time spot. And when we looked, it was booked out for, I think, even 2 weeks in advance, maybe even just like one, but still it was very kind of disheartening that this trip your first time to Tokyo, you weren't able to do the things you wanted to do. And that's why we recommend booking your activities ahead of time so you don't miss out on these experiences. And honestly, guys, the easiest way to do this is with Klook. Klook is an experiences booking platform with thousands of destinations around the world. You can book everything in advance in your own currency, and you'll get the support in your own language. And the prices? Unbeatable. With regular discounts, you'll save even more. We've partnered up with Klook, the sponsor of today's video, for their annual Cherry Blossom campaign, which features up to 50% off tours and activities across Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. Not only that, guys, if you use our discount code JKarolinaKlook, you'll get an additional 10% off most activities, including the ones that are already on discount for the Cherry Blossom season. Download the Klook app on your phone. It only takes a minute, and then you can start booking your next travel adventures. We'll put a link in the description to sign up for Klook, or we'll put a QR code on screen. And don't forget to use our discount code JKarolinaKlook. Number 8 is quite an obvious one, and that is that Japan is quite expensive. And I like to call Karolina the Bank of England because she looks after all of our finances. So she's come up with a daily budget for our 3 weeks in Japan.
Yes, so we actually did a little summary, and the budget per day was in between the range of $100 and $200, and it's a wide range, but actually it really depends where you are in Japan, because we found Kyoto and Tokyo to be way more expensive, for example, than Osaka, right?
Osaka was much cheaper than Kyoto and Tokyo, and the surprising thing was that Kyoto was the most expensive.
Yeah.
Like, our accommodation was way more expensive than Tokyo, and we were sharing a bathroom there.
Exactly. So actually, for accommodation per day, we would usually spend in between $70 to $140, and normally we would go for like a private room with private bathroom, but in Kyoto it wasn't the case.
Yeah, and the rooms they're quite a bit smaller in Japan, so expect them to be smaller. And that's another thing to mention about Kyoto, because of over-tourism, which is something we're going to be talking about later. Definitely make sure, like the activities and experiences, to book well in advance.
Yes. When it comes to food, like we usually ate at convenience stores, local eateries, occasionally at restaurants, but not that often, I would say. And we spent in between $30 to $40 per day.
Yeah. And so I think that food range can differ for people coming to Japan. It really depends on how you view it. I think some people will be like, this is my one-time trip to Japan. I'm going to go full out. I'm going to be eating at the very kind of expensive restaurants to have the full experience. Yeah. And for us, it's more of a balance where we would have quite a bit of convenience store food. Actually, we really enjoyed the convenience store food. But we would occasionally eat at kind of higher end places. So it's just about like having a bit of a balance, but that's how we kept the cost.
And overall it was relatively affordable.
Food actually wasn't that expensive in Japan.
And same with transport. So actually we didn't really calculate the transport on a daily basis, because in the beginning we bought the Welcome Suica card. We loaded each with 10,000 yen, and it was $33 each. And it actually lasted us 3 weeks.
And we even used that card in the convenience store.
Yeah.
So the Suica was great, and the cost of the local transport's not expensive. It's when you start taking like the Shinkansen, that's when the prices go up. Number 9, we did mention this in the last point, but convenience stores in Japan are incredible. And you might be thinking, why are you going all the way to Japan to eat convenience store food? But honestly, guys, we would have like breakfast, lunch and dinner, and we would not be disappointed because of the variety and the quality of the food in Japanese convenience stores. We're talking 7-Eleven, Family Mart, Lawson. Our personal favorite was 7-Eleven, and I am a snacker. So after each day, at the end of the day, not only would have like maybe a meal from convenience stores, but I'd also get a bunch of snacks, and the snacks on offer are just incredible. Like, you can just tell by my energy right now. I was eating so many snacks, and I think that's the one thing that I really miss about Japan, is that there's convenience stores everywhere. Like,
and it was just so convenient to enter any of them and just buy whatever you want.
And like, we're traveling to countries where there are no convenience stores, or they're very difficult to find, and the quality and the variety is just not on offer. So that's something we really miss about Japan. Number 10 is Japanese vending machines. So in Japan, there is a massive vending machine culture. In Tokyo alone, there's over 4 million vending machines. And actually we made a YouTube video where we searched for the most unique vending machines in Tokyo. And we did that over like 2 days.
Yeah.
And it was just so much fun. So if you're coming to Japan, then definitely you want to set some time aside to visit some of these unique vending machines. And actually, not only did we make a whole video on it, but Karolina, you also put links on Google Maps so that people could find them, because actually people, when they do these content, they don't actually put the links or how you can find them, and we've put the links to all of them.
Yeah, and it's actually so much fun because the vending machines are not only serving like regular snacks or drinks, but our favorite was, for example, to have cake in a can. You've gone for the freshly prepared ramen, which is just mind-blowing.
That's great.
Or like a frozen crepe, right?
The vending machines in Japan are just unreal. So definitely when you come to Tokyo, make sure you visit some of the most unique ones.
Number 11, no public trash cans, which essentially means that you need to carry your own trash. And we actually personally found this very shocking, because when you enter Japan, everything is super clean and you would just expect the trash cans to be there.
So when you're traveling to most countries, there's usually public trash cans. And so when you start collecting it all, you're like, oh, you start looking around and there's no trash cans to be seen. So you don't know how to dispose of all your trash. And actually one of the ways that you can do this is you can go to convenience stores and they'll have places to kind of sort all of your trash. And I don't think it's actually frowned upon to do that.
Yeah.
I think people need somewhere to do that. Otherwise, they'll just bring it back to their hotel and dispose of it there. And on the topic of trash, Japan is definitely the cleanest country that we have ever visited. It's very difficult to even find a piece of litter on the streets of Tokyo. I'm saying litter, I'm saying trash, rubbish, like American, British terminology, I'm confusing, but you get the idea here. Japan is super clean.
Point number 12, tiny restaurants and ordering machines. So what you will find in Japan is that most of the eateries and places to eat are quite small and they have limited seating. So actually when you finish your meal, it's quite polite to just make the space for the other customers and leave. But what we actually found very cool is that in some of the places you can order your food on some sort of a vending machines with the buttons.
It's like a ticket machine.
Yeah.
That was so interesting.
Yeah.
When you go into restaurants, there wouldn't be someone taking your order. You literally, as soon as you go into the restaurant, you have to order at this kind of little vending machine.
Yeah.
And if you're wondering how to operate the ticket machines, they'll have the menu items on the buttons. And often they'll be in Japanese. So you might want to ask the server to help you with what they recommend, what are the most popular choices. You put some money in, so you put some Japanese yen in, and then you click the button and then it'll spit out a ticket. And then all you have to do is give that to the server, you sit down, and then they'll bring the food over to you. Number 13 is make sure you have an eSIM. For the past year, we've been using eSIMs and it has been a game changer for us. As soon as we land into a country, literally on the plane, we can activate our eSIM and we're instantly connected to internet. We don't need to waste time getting a SIM card from an airport SIM card shop and trying to deal with all the forms that you have to deal with that. It tends to be more expensive also at the airport. And it's just nice to have internet at your fingertips so that you can then navigate public transportation or getting a taxi. And it just makes life so much easier when you're traveling. And so we really can't live without an eSIM.
Yeah, and actually we used in Japan quite a lot of data, also translating the menus at the restaurants or navigating through the city. So it was very, very useful.
Yeah, we recommend AlloSIM, so we'll put a link in the description. You can use our code JKarolina and you get some nice discount. And we really actually love the app. It really makes it easy for you to purchase your eSIM and they'll give you all the instructions to activate it. It's super straightforward. Number 14, walking and eating not in Japan. This is probably our most surprising discovery of a hidden rule that probably frustrates a lot of Japanese people. So when you're going to places like Takashita Street in Tokyo and you're ordering Japanese street food, do not walk into the pedestrian areas. Eat at the vendor. We even saw Japanese people turning their backs on everyone to kind of be polite and eat just to kind of amongst themselves. And so they're not kind of risking spilling food and drink on people. I think that's the reason why there is that rule, that hidden rule, is because it gets quite crowded in these kind of narrow areas. And so you don't want to be spilling food and drink on people. It's just basic etiquette in Japan. And even on public transport, it is seen as impolite to be eating and drinking on public transport, so definitely avoid doing that. Number 15, the unspoken rule in Japan. So one thing that really shocked us was how quiet things are in Japan. People are really mindful of other people. We would go into these small little restaurants and people would just be kind of to themselves, like almost introverted. They're not really having conversations with other people. And so coming from where we come from, especially for me in the UK, where it's normal to be having conversations on public transport, in restaurants, it took us quite back, like how peaceful and quiet things are. So I think when you go to Japan, just be mindful of that. And that's something that I had to kind of just keep checking in with myself, that I'm not being too loud, or I'm not talking too loudly. And you really want to kind of get acclimatized to their culture. So you're in Japan, you want to do how the Japanese do.
And that brings us to our next point, which is number 16. Japan can feel isolating. And what I mean by that is that actually Japanese people are very polite but quite reserved, and it's not normal to have like a conversation with a stranger or in general like to be so like super social. So even actually when they eat, like they're quite like
to themselves. Like I said
exactly.
at the earlier point, they're very introverted.
Even the spaces are quite designed that way. So for example, you can enter a ramen place and you can actually be surrounded with like the wooden sort of like walls.
Like booth, like where you're eating by yourself. I think Japan is like an introvert's dream.
Yeah.
But if you're coming like as a solo traveler, I think in particular to Japan, I think it might feel a bit lonely at times because you don't have that kind of human connection. And I think that's why a lot of people who do travel to Japan are usually with friends or as a couple. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't travel to Japan as a solo traveler. Definitely travel to Japan. I know there's so many people who may not have friends who can afford to go to Japan at that time, or they might not just have time. And so you often do travel to Japan by yourself. I think the points that we would suggest are to stay in hostels where you can meet like-minded people and you can make friendships and you can travel possibly around Japan together, or book group tours. There's a lot of group tours that you can do in Japan where you can meet people. I think that's a great way to have some like human connection whilst on your travels around Japan. And again, don't forget to use Klook. We'll put a link in the description and you can book group tours with them in Japan. Number 17, tipping isn't a thing in Japan, and it can even be considered as being rude. Now, the Japanese have a very high sense of service and they're very proud of this high level of hospitality. So when you tip, it can sometimes be misconstrued and they might think it's being like rude, when actually when back home you'd be tipping and people would be super happy for it. It's a little bit different in Japan. So don't be surprised if you do give a tip or if you let them keep the change, that you'll have a Japanese server chasing you down to give you your money back, thinking that you've forgotten your money. Now, the way that you can just be polite and thank them for their service is just to say arigato gozaimasu. Number 18. So this is a bit of a bonus point where we talk about over-tourism in Kyoto. We visited during November, which is peak season for autumn and fall, so you can see them beautiful colors on the maple trees. So when we came to Kyoto, it was quite shocking, the numbers of people that we would see at the temples. And we're talking even would get up early and would be at temples by like 8 a.m. and they'll be completely covered. And then by the time it gets like 9, 10 a.m., all of the tour groups have come, all the school groups have come, and the temples are completely flooded.
You would get actually stuck in a traffic jam of people, literally.
And so our recommendations is definitely still go to Kyoto.
Yes.
Absolutely beautiful, like the most beautiful temples that we've ever seen in our lives. And the nature is just incredible.
So stunning.
Just get up super early. Like if you want the temples kind of to yourself, you need to be getting up as early as 5, 6 a.m. and getting straight to the temples. And it's not as straightforward getting to the temples because sometimes you need to take buses. And when you take the buses, they are jam-packed with tourists. And so getting around the buses can be a little bit uncomfortable. But what we would say is that it's just the most popular temples. So that's to be expected. But actually, Kyoto has another side to it where it's very quiet. You can be walking in the streets and there's no people. And so there's definitely like hidden gems and places where it's much quieter. So you may want to have like a bit of a balance, because what we did over 3 days, we made a video on this, so you can see it. Again, we'll link it in the description. But every single time we went to the most like major places to visit,
and
in
also
Kyoto.
Restaurants that we wanted to eat in. Actually, like if you really want to make sure to eat at particular places, we would advise you to make a booking first, or like just check.
Do your research on the places that you want to visit and book in advance, like your reservation, because there was times when we would try to eat at places and they would have been reserved like 2-3 weeks before. Remember guys, with Japan, there are people who are planning for their Japan trip like a year in advance. Alrighty guys, we hope you got all the information that you need to have an incredible trip in Japan. We really wish we had known some of these things in this video before traveling to Japan, and it's great that we can share this with you so that you have a smooth and stress-free trip to Japan. Don't forget, there'll be links to all of the things that we mentioned in the video in the description below, so have a check of that. It's a great resource for you to check out. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you guys in
the next video.